Hello and welcome to Dawn Chorus Writes. I'm Dawn and I will be writing Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction. This is my first series on Miraculous called Meeting Under the Stars. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and I would love to hear your comments down below. So sit back, listen to the audio version of Meeting Under the Stars. Meeting Under the Stars, Chapter 2, Adrien's POV. Come on, slow coach, Marinette waved her hand behind her. At this rate, I'm going to win the bet again, and you'll be buying breakfast for a week. She sprinted forward and aimed her body in an angle to take on the row of tires. Adrien watched her smile at him and felt a sense of warmth wash over him. Fatigue consumed his entire body after last night's Akuma fight, and then forcing himself to break away from Marinette's hold when she was deep enough asleep had been torture. It wasn't until 2 a.m. he had been able to collapse in his own bed, only to be woken by his alarm 3 hours later. He didn't know how she did it, have this much energy in the mornings. She had experienced the same Akuma fight as him. She had even been knocked out from one of the blasts, sending her through a wall. His heart had stopped beating for the entire time it took her to respond to his touch and open her eyes, reliving the same relief that washed over his body, not knowing if he could survive losing both his partner, Ladybug, but also his love, Marinette. If only he could tell her of his fear and how the painful thought brought him to tears last night as he held her. What is with you this morning? Her face held a smile, but her eyes had the same look of concern she had last night. If only he could tell her that it was the same man. I think someone is going to need an extra shot of green juice after this workout. It's a good job you're paying, she chuckled before taking on the monkey bars. I wouldn't count on it, he laughed back, pushing his body and his mind to the limits to go faster. This afternoon was a project session, free time. If he had some luck, there wouldn't be another Akuma fight, and he might be able to get a cheeky nap in before his shift at work tonight. After another 20 minutes, he and Marinette collapsed on the grass. I don't think I can move. Will you carry me to the bakery? She gazed at him, trying to hold back the giggles with a serious tone. Otherwise, you might still find me asleep in the same spot this time tomorrow. I think the people who have booked out the park gym after us might have something to say about that. He gave her a grin in return. Plus, I was going to ask the same of you. I didn't know your body could hurt like this. This park was one of the better ideas to convince Mayor Bourgeois that Paris needed its own outdoor gym. To be honest, I'm surprised how much use it gets, but I do wish sometimes we booked out a slot a tad later than 6 a.m. It's the only way we can fit in between my classes at art college and yours at the university, perfectly placed between the two. Adrien had to contain himself not to repeat the words with his own pun perfectly, as Shat would do. No. Here he was Adrien and not Shat. Alone in her room. Suddenly aware that his fingers were almost touching hers, the thought of last night replaying in his head, Adrien jumped to his feet. Is it time to go? Marinette moaned and held her hand up to him in a mocking, pitiful manner. Help me. Adrien clasped his hands around hers, ignoring the tingling feeling, and yanked her up. He had done it in a little too forceful and ended up slamming their bodies together. To stop her from falling backwards, he instantly wrapped his arms around her, with her head tucked in underneath his. A smell of a shampoo filled his senses. The same smell from their secret nights lying in each other's arms as she tried to comfort her friend and partner. It was the same smell that comforted him when he was alone at night, waking from nightmares and buried secrets. Sorry. Marinette took a step back, pulling herself out of his embrace, the same blush to her cheeks he knew so well. I think I might need a shower before class. But first, breakfast, and you are paying my friend. Friend, he muttered to himself. A bet is a bet. She gave him a wide grin and a light chuckle as she made her way back towards the bench to pick up her bag. Fine, but not doubles. I don't get paid until next week. But I'm starving. Look at me, practically wasting away. Her imitation of Ursula breaking through. Her idea of a joke. Ever since he had told her he hadn't seen The Little Mermaid and she had forced him to watch it, curled up in the flat he shared with Ali and Nino on a wet Sunday afternoon. She had come out with it when he had denied her a third helping of ice cream and riding a sugar high at the time. It ended up with the two of them in a popcorn fight and laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. At last, they called it truce and half a scoop as a deal. Her head leaning on his shoulder, curled up under the blankets with the girl he loved. And yet, they were friends. Still, only friends. As Adrien and as Chat. He knew she wasn't dating, so that wasn't what was holding her back. Perhaps she didn't see him that way, and for now, that was okay. He was lucky enough to have a great friend like Marinette, his princess, in his life, and for that he wouldn't risk it for the world. Do you think they might put a shot of espresso in your green juice today? What? He pulled a face at the idea of it and making her laugh. You are not with it today. Lost somewhere in there. She reached up onto the balls of her toes and ruffled his sweaty blonde hair. For a moment she paused, staring at him, stroking down his temples in a loving manner. Their faces merely an inch apart. He could lean in and kiss her, confess his love and all that held dear in his heart. Tell her he was her Chat and she was his lady. But he had fallen in love with her well before he knew. And yet, the moment passed. She pulled a mocking facial expression of yuck at his sweaty hair and wiped it on his top, letting out a cheeky laugh. He couldn't help but beam at the sound and laughing as he took chase after her. At the gates of the park, he made his usual turn left towards the usual cafe for breakfast, when Marinette gazed down at her watch. Crap! Isn't that the time? It's 7:30 already. Oh, really? He studied the clock on his phone, and she was right. I need to go. I can't be late for class again. She gave him a knowing look as images of her running late into the class all those times back in high school. I was late last week, and Mr. Beaufort still hasn't let me forget it. She placed the handle of her bag over her shoulder. See you tomorrow? She raised her hand in the air and gave a half wave. Yes. Count me in, as always. She answered back with a large grin before turning and running down the street, the opposite way he was going. He craved sleep, moaning at the thought of class in an hour and trying to stay awake as he discussed past kings of France in his history lessons. The memory of last night flashed into his mind, holding his princess in his arms, wishing he could stay. Maybe a nap now and then a Kuma fight later? This way he wouldn't have to wait so long until he saw her again, fighting with his lady and sleeping with his princess. Thank you for listening to Chapter 2. I hope you liked it. Leave a comment down below and make sure you keep a lookout for Chapter 3 of Meeting Under the Stars.